Hi, I'm Susan Guiazda. Welcome to This Week in Ames. On today's show, we'll check in with the Historic Preservation Commission. Today my guest is Sharon Worth, who is chairwoman of the Ames Historic Preservation Commission. Sharon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So the Ames Historic Preservation Commission is one of the city commissions, and why don't you tell us a little bit about its role?
Okay, great. We are charged with informing people, educating people, and being advocates for historic preservation, historic structures within the city. So some of those are landmarks and are designated. Others are just kind of out there, still waiting for people perhaps to appreciate them.
Now, is there an official age something has to be historic?
Usually you're looking at 50 years or more. So 50 years back is probably kind of surprising to some people what fits into that category suddenly.
And it's not just buildings, it is structures. What else?
Right. We deal usually with some permanent buildings or representations. So, we're talking about buildings, we might be talking about fences, we might be talking about bridges, any kind of a structure really that tells us something about our cultural or architectural heritage.
Now, I think people in Ames are familiar with the historic downtown area, and perhaps campus as being significant areas of history in Ames, but it's bigger than that.
It's way bigger than that. We have one official historic district in Ames, north of downtown, a residential district, but there are many, many places that could be historic districts and certainly would meet the qualifications. There's some work going on right now to prepare a National Register application for the Main Street Cultural Area, for example. So hopefully within about a year or so that will come to be, and that will actually be listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
Now, I know that you live in a historic home. Have you always had an interest in history?
I have, and it got keenly focused. We had lived in the area north of downtown for a number of years, but began to really appreciate the architecture and some of the things that were happening that perhaps we didn't appreciate. So started working as a volunteer then to make people more aware of historic preservation in Ames. That was over 25 years ago. We didn't even have a chapter in the city code that dealt with historic preservation, so we had to get some enabling legislation passed and really start at the ground level in terms of education for historic preservation in Ames.
Now, in addition to serving on the Historic Preservation Commission, you were a former council person. Was that, again, something that came out of your interest in history, or?
It did grow from that, actually. It was the early 80s when I was working pretty intensely as a volunteer with establishing the historic district there, and kind of towards the end of that, the first ward seat was open, and I decided to run because of my involvement with the city and working with the city staff so much, and lots of encouragement from citizens. So,
the Historic Preservation Commission has one of its roles to educate, and I understand you have a series of events coming up in the next few months that will work on that education component.
We do. We're very excited about this. We've not really done a series before. So the first one is coming up on April 8th. There'll be another one in May, one in June, and one in July. So we're very excited about helping the people of Ames know a little bit more about historic preservation.
And for these events, you're going to bring in then speakers who are going to speak on specialty areas.
Exactly, and we'll start with kind of a broad view. Our speaker is Steve Wilkie Shapiro. He's with a building firm in Clive, and he will talk about why old buildings matter. So just kind of set the stage about some things. He actually is an Ames native, so he has some very personal ties to Ames, but has worked with the building industry as an architect for many, many years, and works a lot with historic preservation.
And he has an interesting background both in building, construction, architecture, but also social work, which is sort of a unique background for somebody in his field.
Yes, and so I think he really brings a little more personalization to it than many people might. He's very interested in what the clients are thinking and how to put that together with the project that he's working on. And throughout the years, he has developed this interest in historic preservation. He's a fairly frequent speaker around Iowa talking about historic preservation. Has initiated some really good things down in the Des Moines area.
Interesting topic, why old buildings matter. There's I think a huge movement right now in recycling, but also what they call upcycling. You know, taking interesting artifacts from buildings and finding another way to use them or display them. Do you think Steve will talk about that at all?
I'm sure we'll talk about sustainability. Historic preservation and sustainability are really pretty well married. What is a higher degree of sustainability than reusing a building and maintaining all those building materials that all the energy was used to produce many years ago, rather than throwing it out, putting it in the landfill, to reuse that, to rehab it, to make it more energy efficient, to make it work for today's lifestyle. All of those kinds of things are part of historic preservation and definitely part of sustainability.
And it's great that he'll be speaking at Ames City Hall, which is, again, as you pointed out, another great use of an old building through adaptive reuse, an old school building that became very functioning as a government building.
Absolutely. We have a number of really good examples in the city, and City Hall is certainly one of those. Another one closely related to City Hall is the 1915 municipal building, which was the City Hall, now is used by Youth and Shelter Services, but that's another really, really good example of historic preservation in the downtown area.
So as you said before, April 8th will be your featured speaker, but you have additional speakers planned into the future months. What are some of the topics that we might
have
see?
4 topics. This series is presented by the Ames Historic Preservation Commission, the Ames Smart Growth Alliance, Preservation Iowa, and the Ames Historical Society. So we've all come together to put together this series. So we'll start this one in April. In May, we're working on a speaker who will talk about repair and rehabilitation of historic windows. So that's a big topic right now. Too many people are throwing away their windows and doing replacements, and there are really many ways to repair and increase the energy efficiency of those historic windows. So we're anxious to talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about sustainability, have a speaker that will talk about sustainability as it relates to historic preservation specifically. And then the 4th one will be about tax credits. There are tax credits available for people who are doing historic preservation at both the state level and the federal level. So we think people need to know a little bit more about those. They've been used a little bit in Ames, not very much, and I think there's a lot of opportunities to be using those in Ames. So we want to help people get acquainted with some of that material also.
They sound like really exciting topics. These lectures are free to the public. Who do you envision who might be attracted to coming to these?
You know, I hope all the citizens of Ames are interested. It is based on your cultural heritage and your architecture in the city, so hopefully all citizens will be interested in that. Certainly owners of old historic buildings have much to gain, but I think there's also much to gain just by the general public. Certainly contractors can learn a lot of things that would fit into the series also. So
not necessarily targeting any population, but really the entire community.
Absolutely. We welcome everyone and hope that they will attend.
Great. Well, Sharon, thank you for stopping by. This is a great topic for a lecture, and I'm curious to see how these work out for you.
Thank you very much.
Historic Preservation Commission meetings are televised live on Channel 12, but if you miss them, you can always get them on our video on demand on our website at cityofames.org. Another thing coming up in March, remember the Eco Fair on Saturday, March 30th. Learn all about sustainability and eco-friendly techniques at our Eco Fair from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Community Center Gymnasium. Well, that's our show for today. Thanks for watching, and tune in next week for This Week in Ames.